Hello and welcome to HR with Heart. Today I'm going to talk about the workplace of 2021. Now, none of us could have predicted the turbulent times that 2020 brought us. But in saying that, it also brought a lot of lessons and it brought a lot of positive action as well. And as we bring these learnings into 2021 with us, what I'm seeing is a lot of companies are starting to put massive action into building workplaces that will work for everybody and that will deliver the business outcomes they're looking for. Now, not only is this the right thing to do, but it yields a huge investment for business. And the key to making all of this work is the F word, flexibility, and realizing that what works for us may not necessarily work for everybody else. So today I'm going to talk about 4 particular areas: burnout, remote working, office politics, and professional development. So we'll start with burnout. 2021 has arguably done more than any other year in highlighting the need for well-being support for employees. 2020 and the pandemic and everything that it brought pushed many employees and leaders and companies to the edge of their well-being, and it revealed the truth about burnout in its many forms. We've seen healthcare workers and frontline workers been profoundly impacted by the pandemic. Parents have been impacted as they struggle to juggle the demands of working life, childcare, teaching in some cases, and maybe even supporting elderly parents. Managers have been pushed to the edge as they've brought and supported their teams through the past 12 months. And many people have felt that they've had no choice but to just keep on pushing through. And what I'm starting to see is that those people are now starting to pay the price for that, and they're starting to feel the impact of all that pushing through. So we have seen a lot of positive action over the last year, and we have seen a lot of well-being supports being put in place, and we've seen a lot of companies stepping up in doing this. So what I'd like to say is that we can be proud of everything that we've put in place, but it's important to also acknowledge that we still have a long road ahead of us. When the pandemic does end, the toll that it's taken on employee well-being will linger beyond the pandemic itself, and we need to be aware of that. Ongoing burnout can lead to absence, diminished motivation, underperformance, and ultimately employees seeking other employment. So if you want to avoid losing people and facing the high costs of recruitment to replace them and all that goes with that, then I suppose I'm encouraging people to be proactive and to start putting customized policies and procedures in place for your workplace. Because remote working isn't going away. And as I heard one person say earlier this week, the genie is out of the bottle now, and there's no going back to the old normal when the pandemic is finally over. What 2020 really showed us and proved in some ways is that remote working can work really well for some people. So these learnings can't be unlearned now, and we really can't go backwards. So especially if businesses want to continue to reap the benefits of having an engaged and productive workforce, then we have to move forward. So what it does mean is that we're likely to see an increase in this new term that I keep hearing of hybrid working, where employees will be offered some flexibility within a framework where they will spend some time working remotely and some time in the office. And that blend will obviously be dependent on the demands of the role and the demands of the business. And I imagine that this will probably evolve and get reworked and recustomized, and it might look different in different companies, but I think this hybrid model is probably here to stay. And in a shift from moving away from the grey office blocks that we're all used to spending our time in, as companies start to build new models for their workplaces, the new models will be built to support collaboration, meetings, even social events. So this is a biggie for a lot of people. And shared workspaces will also come to the fore because they'll be essential for offering respite to employees from the potential loneliness and disconnect that they might feel from working remotely. And that brings us on to the office politics and the social aspect of work. For as long as there's been offices, there's been office politics and there's been cliques. But just because businesses are moving away from that working model doesn't mean that the office politics are just suddenly going to disappear. What I anticipate will happen is that this whole space will mutate. Um, there's been an upsurge of online platforms for communicating with employees and to keep employees connected with the workplace and engaged with their workplace. And while some of these platforms do provide an opportunity for voices to have an equal footing, they do also afford room for voices to be lost. And again, we need to be aware of that. So the risk is that the social lines won't be dissolved with these online platforms, but that they actually get even stronger. And without the opportunity for in-person connection, the casual chit chat, the water cooler chats that we all hear about, and just the general interaction that we have at work. Employees who join a company and go through their induction process remotely now run the risk of being excluded in the social aspect of work. Because without the existing bonds in place that can ground these online channels and forums and chat rooms and all the rest of it, it might look like it's actually impossible to navigate getting into the culture of an organization for a new person coming in. So we need to pay special attention to this and to our new people coming on board. And for managers, this whole challenge is even amplified further because there's more hurdles to jump when you're connecting with people, particularly if you're connecting with a pre-existing team that used to be physically together, and now all the communication is in a digital-only space. So that's a challenge for managers. So what's to do? Well, I'm suggesting that we listen to our employees, we pay attention to what they're telling us, we discover the cracks where voices potentially are being lost, and that we action those. And that's how we'll stop and prevent breeding division within the social aspect of the workplace. And the last thing I want to talk about then is professional development, because what I'm hearing in an awful lot of businesses, and I've just mentioned it, is that people are looking at new workplace models. They're looking at COVID-19 recovery plans and just trying to look at what the world might look like when all this is finally behind us. And what it's resulted in is that an awful lot of employees' perceptions of how their careers might pan out has changed. It's dented confidence in a lot of people in terms of how they might progress now, seeing that they're working at home and remotely. And progression has become a concern for a lot of people. In some cases, it's even made people feel like their skills are even less valuable now, which is, an odd outcome, but it is happening. So the risk is that as we focus in on our recovery plans, that we lose sight of learning and development and that they take a back seat. So why is this a risk? Well, if that happens, it's going to be a catalyst for frustrated employees. It'll negatively impact motivation, confidence in career progression, and then employees start to take a back seat and opt out themselves. And ultimately their productivity can go down, engagement can go down, morale can be negatively impacted, and people can start leaving. So upskilling and retraining is going to be crucial to reinvigorating employee confidence and in their progression and in their future careers. So businesses also really need to get to grips really quickly with training people digitally, because all companies have a responsibility to make sure that our employees have the skills and the knowledge and the abilities to perform the roles that they're in. And with all this remote working and even with the hybrid models, there's going to be a greater focus on digital learning. So we all need to come to grips with that. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it and it has found some value, and thank you for listening here. If you are in this space and need any further information, feel free to get in touch. So that's it for today, folks. See you next week. Take care.